Welcome to 12 Minutes or Less with the Author. I'm your host, T.L. Brown, but you can call me Tracy. Let's get started.
But part of the reasons, I wrote this book was to hit on a lot of these dark themes. It goes into prescription drug abuse. It talks a lot about alcoholism. There's a lot of sexual coercion in there. There is a sexual assault from a female on a male, which is something that, you don't see a whole lot of. It's not really brought to light. So there were just a lot of important issues I thought that really needed to be brought into the light. And so I wrote this book. Another reason I chose this book is because, like we were saying before we got on the air here, is that I have a couple of different main characters that people seem to really like. One of them is from the Raven song series, Raven, the main character. And then here's Jake Nightmare, Jay Nightingale, and he is from another series. And the fact that people liked Jay more than Raven blew my mind, because Raven is fun. He's funny. He's erratic. He's got a lot of energy. And Jay is just so quiet and so unassuming. And I was so surprised that people liked him more. So I thought, you know what? Let's just tell his story.
So then when I started writing paranormal, it seemed so much easier in a supernatural setting to have people with abilities that, the question of speed or strength or stamina or healing doesn't really come into it. I also really love the idea of a reader reading one of my books and coming away and maybe walking down the street and seeing somebody walking towards them and going, that person could be a shifter, that person could be a vampire. And, our lives can be quite, monotonous and the same old, same old. And I think it injects a lovely bit of excitement to think that maybe somebody's closed my book and they're like that. They're seeing behind the veil, as we'd say, and questioning, that big old house up on that hill. Who lives in there? What do they do up there? And that's what I love about magical realism and bringing supernatural into books, because I think it creates a really exciting layer that you can really get some juicy plot lines going.
And now, bing, we've got Fatal Vow right there. I'm so excited, and I was able to read an advanced copy, and you hit this one out of the park. So tell us about your latest mystery thriller, Fatal Vow.
Fatal Vow brings all of those little Easter eggs that I dropped in Divine Guidance and Torn Veil all together in this one. It's a huge story. It's quite complex. But Marnie Riley, my main character, is a psychic psychologist. She has been through an awful lot in her life, and the past year has been a shitstorm. She's got a stalker. She's got a few really horrible people wandering around her life, and Creekwood is fraught with murder. It's every corner you turn, there's a body. Not quite that bad, but it very much is the coming together of the first two books, and everything is explained. But don't worry, there is a fourth on the way, because when I leave people with a cliffhanger, I got to come back and tell them what's going on.
So with when I was thinking of beginning this from a female perspective, there were two potential logical choices, which were two of the main characters of Megan or Susie. And Megan was definitely more fun. So I thought that would, she would be the sort of the starting point for refining my dining. And I would say of the books that I've written to date, this was definitely the most fun to write. And with writing sort of from BJ's perspective, I was I was largely, I think, constrained in my mind by my own character traits and the boundaries that I have, because BJ's kind of based from me. But whereas writing from Megan's perspective, I felt, much, much freer to explore. Now, when, you sort of ask about challenges of writing from a female perspective, my question really is, well, is there any such thing as a female perspective? I'm not so sure. I mean, every individual is different anyway, and I certainly, from my own experience, I'm not sure that I've ever found anybody who actually thinks the same way that I do.
That's a fair question that you're asking back. Absolutely.
But anyway, I mean, throughout life, as a person, I've always struggled with being overly self-conscious. And because of that, I think it's been natural for me to always try to put myself in other people's shoes and try to imagine how they see situations and indeed how they see me.
I came to know you through your popular trilogy, A Grimm series. Can you tell us a little about that series and how the story and the characters evolved over 3 books?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said in my bio, a Grimm series came about because I had a dream about a Grim Reaper. So, I actually dreamt about the first chapter, in which the Grim Reaper is in a restaurant and he's watching people, and he's watching one person in particular, and he's weighing up their probability of death. And in that scene, a woman, Emma, who is my main character, sees him, and she's the only one that can see him. And she gets up to go and investigate, but actually never gets to him before he decides that the man who he's watching, his fates conclude, and so the Grim Reaper disappears. So I had this dream, and I kind of thought nothing of it at first, other than it kept replaying in my brain. And I kept saying to my husband, oh, it's really interesting, isn't it? What would happen if, and what would happen if? And I think in the end, he got so fed up of me that he said, I'm going to just write it down. So I basically started writing it down. I had no sense of a plot, no idea where it was going. You might have guessed by now that I'm a bit of a pantser. Even now to this day, when I write, my husband says, where's the end of this book? I'm like, I have no idea. Just write what comes to mind. So I started writing about Emma and Blake, so the Grim Reaper and Emma who can see him. And I just started thinking, what would happen if? And I knew I wanted them to get together. I knew there was something about her being the only one that could see him. And I wanted to understand that. And I wanted to understand what it would be like for somebody who had basically had no interaction with anybody for the last 1,000 years. So very much that was where book 1 came from. And book 1 kind of on its own just felt a little bit flat without something else in it. So I added a second kind of sub-story, which is a stalking sub-story, which actually required some research with the police to make sure that I didn't mess up any of the British policing. So that was where book 1 came from. I wrote all sorts into book 1 that I had absolutely no idea where it was going. And then thought, I quite enjoyed doing this. It was a bit of fun, wasn't it?
This has been 12 Minutes or Less with the author. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Hope you can join me for the next one. Until then, this is Tracy, aka Author T.L. Brown, signing off.